Raising Us is sponsored by Nugget, makers of the original Play Couch.
I learned early on that the most important thing that kids need to know is that they're safe. They need to know that there's enough for the things that are necessary, not so much for the things that just come up out of thin air that they decide they want to do at the spur of the moment.
Parenting doesn't come with a script, but it does come with lots of questions. I'm Elise Hugh, journalist, mom, and your host for Raising Us, a podcast from A Kids Co. Every week, we break down the big, timely topics so you can have honest, meaningful conversations with your kids. Because these conversations, they matter. And every time we show up for them, we're not just raising thoughtful kids, we're raising us, too. On today's episode, we're jumping into a topic that's on a lot of our minds but doesn't get talked about that often: status and money. How do kids make sense of money and what it really means to be wealthy or poor? How does that affect how they see themselves and others? Joining us to help break it all down is Jean Chatzky. She's an award-winning personal finance journalist and the CEO of Her Money, a company that's all about helping people feel more confident and empowered with their finances. Jean also hosts the Her Money podcast and is a New York Times and Wall Street Journal bestselling author of more than a dozen books. Jean sits down to share her decades of insights on talking with kids about money, status, and self-worth. Jean Chatzky, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Let's start with young Jean. What was your early experience with money and understanding money growing up?
I understood that we didn't have a ton of it. My father was a college professor for most of my young life. My mom stayed home mostly. She substitute taught sporadically, but I got the message that we were careful about our money. It wasn't that we were wanting for anything, but I vividly remember we had this pig. It was a bull, but it was a piggy bank in the shape of a bull. I'm looking because it's like here. It's made its way into my house after I lost my parents. And my parents, for years and years and years, would throw, whenever they got a $50 coin or a dollar coin, they would throw it into that pig. And when they planned our first trip to Disney World, which was a big deal, they saved for this for a long time. The money in that pig was the money to pay for the entrance to the park and the rides. And we all sat on the floor in the living room and opened the pig and counted the money in the pig. And my parents, I think, had not looked at this for literally years and were so surprised that there was a significant amount of money there, and it was enough to do what we wanted to do. So I was raised to be a saver.
Yeah, I was going to say that probably shaped your early understanding and even now has an influence on what you do and how you think about things. What did you notice, if anything, in terms of differences in how money affected your life and your family's life versus maybe your peers?
We, as I said, were careful, and I definitely, as a child, I noticed kids in the neighborhood or kids at school who had a little more or had a little less. Uh, these things are very apparent to kids. You know when a child has a new backpack. You know when a child has brand new school supplies. And you know when a child is using leftovers from last year. You know who buys lunch and who brings lunch. These it, you even pay attention starting at a very, very young age to whose parents drive which kind of cars. I mean, I in my recollection, it was, did you have one car in the driveway or two cars in the driveway? In those days, having two cars was kind of a big deal. Not many families did. So you wouldn't think that kids would pay attention to those differences, but I think they become really apparent really early.
So, given this observation, the fact that you realize the kids can kind of see with their own eyes and notice these differences and might compare themselves with their peers, how did it affect you when it came to talking to your own kids about, well, their status?
I learned early on that the most important thing that kids need to know is that they're safe. They need to know that there's enough for the things that are necessary, not so much for the things that just come up out of thin air that they decide they want to do at the spur of the moment, but they need to understand that their bedrock of security is there. And that's something that applies not just in terms of money, but in terms of the fact that the adults in their life are going to be there for them, are going to take care of them, are going to make sure that the boxes are checked as far as their basic needs. We were fortunate enough by the time I had children to have more than enough money for basic essentials. My bigger concern was not to not to give my children so much license that they felt like money was unlimited. I wanted to teach them that it is a limited resource. You have to be cognizant of how you're using that resource, because otherwise, raising kids to be financially responsible adults is a really, really tough job.
You are now working on a number of projects or have worked on a number of projects that help teach kids about money and financial literacy. What are kids most curious about when it comes to understanding money?
They're very curious about how much things cost. They're very curious about why certain things cost more than other things. Shopping with kids is a fabulously educational experience. I mean, just going shopping with a young child in a grocery store has so many incredible eye-opening moments. I remember having discussions with my kids in the cereal aisle. We ate a lot of cereal. They and just explaining, well, this week we're going to buy the Post Raisin Bran rather than the Kellogg's Raisin Bran because the Post Raisin Bran happens to be on sale, and really it's just the same thing in a different box anyway. So let's look at the pricing. Let's look at the ad campaign. Let's look at why they're putting this one on sale this week. Let's look at the variety. Let's look at how much you can get for your money, and let's make a decision together about which is the right one to buy. I mean, those sorts of interactions I remember having all the time. I also started my kids on an allowance pretty early because one of the things that I understood was that their money was going to be a lot more valuable to them than my money. So, although
Yes.
they were very willing to ask for candy in the checkout aisle going back to the grocery store if I was paying for it. When I reminded them that they had money and they should bring their money, and if they wanted a Reese's cup, they should actually spend their money to buy it, all of a sudden they didn't want it so much. And um, that's how they started learning that they needed to marshal their own resources.
Where do you come down on the question of allowance and when to start allowance or whether to do it at all?
I think it's a great tool. I think it's a great way to teach your kids how to handle a budget. But I think most parents do it wrong. You can't give your kids an allowance and then continue to buy everything, which is what a lot of people do.
Mm.
They hand their kids an allowance and then they say, "Oh, this is your money to save." Well, no. You have to teach them how to spend responsibly. And so an allowance should come with a list of things that you're no longer going to buy for your kids. That could be candy in the grocery store, that could be trading cards, that could be, as they get older, gifts for their friends. It could be manicures. It could be clothing if your kids are able to handle a sizable chunk of money. The amount gets bigger, the list of things gets bigger, and the goal is that when you send your kids off to college and they have to handle a month's worth of money at a time or a semester's worth of money at a time, they don't blow it all in the first couple of weeks, which is what happens with a lot of kids. I also think it's really, really important that kids work in high school. They have to work for money, because even though an allowance is a valuable teaching tool, money they earn outside of the home is more valuable to them than their allowance. When um, I remember my son started babysitting in high school, for kids in the neighborhood, and he wanted a jersey. He had a collection of football jerseys. He wanted another football jersey, and I said, "Well, you've got money. You want to buy this jersey? Buy this jersey." And in his head, he said, "Well, that's 4 hours of my time." And I said, "That's right." And all of a sudden, he didn't want that jersey quite so much. I think he did eventually buy it, but only once he had saved up a considerable amount of money.
Support for this podcast comes from Aura Frames. We're getting closer to the holiday season, and Aura Frame would be a great gift to bring your favorite holiday traditions and memories to life every day. One of my favorite holiday traditions is actually a birthday tradition in our house. It was probably started 4 generations ago by my great-grandmother. On the morning of our birthdays, some elder, so it could be your mom or your grandma, will take a hard-boiled egg and roll it kind of like from your head to toe to symbolize kind of rolling away all of the bad vibes from the previous year. And we certainly do have photos from this year after year that could be a great, example of a tradition that we can show off in an Aura digital frame. Aura frames have unlimited free photos and video. You can preload photos before it ships. If you're giving an Aura frame as a gift, you can add a message to personalize your gift before it arrives. And it's an easy way to share photos and videos effortlessly. So a great idea would be to gift an Aura frame to your mom and dad, for example. And if you have kids, then they could get updated photos of their grandkids throughout the year. You can't wrap togetherness, but you can frame it. For a limited time, visit auraframes.com and get $45 off Aura's best-selling Carver Mat frames, named #1 by Wirecutter. And all you have to do is use promo code RAISINGUS at checkout. That's AURA frames.com, promo code RAISINGUS. This exclusive Black Friday, Cyber Monday deal is their best of the year, so order now before it ends. Support the show by mentioning us at the checkout. Terms and conditions apply. Hey y'all, it's Elise, and I actually am so nearsighted that I started wearing contact lenses when I was 9 years old. So I have a long history of putting contact lenses in my eyes and needing them and needing to reorder my disposables. Now my daughter wears them. She's 13, and I really need a service that has fast and reliable delivery because, especially in my daughter's case, she often tells me that she needs new contacts a little bit too late in her stash. She'll be down to 1 or 2 sets of contacts and then finally mention, "Oh, hey, yeah, I need new contacts," like the day after tomorrow. If you hate running out of contacts or having to make an eye doctor appointment every time you're running low, 1-800-CONTACTS is the best solution. They will save you time and money. They offer fast, free shipping on every order and have more than 100 million contact lenses in stock, ready to ship from their distribution centers across the country. And free returns and exchanges mean you can order confidently. They even offer unbeatable perks like free torn lens replacement. My daughter Ava needs those. Whether you have a strong prescription or astigmatism, they will deliver your contacts with fast, free shipping straight to your mailbox. Getting contacts doesn't have to be a hassle. Let 1-800-CONTACTS get you the contact lenses you need right now. Order online at 1-800-CONTACTS.com or download the free 1-800-CONTACTS app today. Hey, it's Elise, and I, for one, remember those early days of pregnancy with all the decisions that you have to consider and how high stakes it felt to take care of my own body when I knew I was carrying a fetus. Many prenatal multivitamins aren't even clinically tested. Plus, pregnant women, particularly those from diverse racial and ethnic backgrounds, are routinely excluded from clinical studies. And for these reasons, I would recommend Ritual's Essential for Women Prenatal. It's the #1 best-selling prenatal and the only leading prenatal backed by its own human clinical trial. Essential Prenatal was shown to help deliver key nutrients, including folate, biotin, and vitamin D. Essential Prenatal was also designed with morning sickness in mind. Moms taking Ritual reported their prenatal to be easier to swallow, gentler on the stomach, and a better overall positive experience than those taking a leading prenatal. Don't settle for less than evidence-based support. My listeners get early access to their Black Friday sale for 40% off your first month at ritual.com/raisingus. That's ritual.com/raisingus for 40% off your first month. Don't miss out on their best sale of the season. We're talking about high school aged kids now who are able to work, but when do you think parents should start having conversations about money and maybe status with their kids? Because they are kind of growing up in the world and noticing it anyway.
I think you can start having money conversations very, very young. You can start having money conversations as soon as your kids are old enough to start making choices. They don't feel like money conversations, but what you're teaching them again is back to that concept of money's a limited resource. You can't have everything. You have to pick the blue coat or the red coat. Which one are you going to put on today? Which one are we going to buy for this season? Those are money conversations hiding in other conversations. We talk about status. As soon as you notice that your kids are starting to notice it, if you haven't talked with them about it by the time they're on social media, it's probably a little bit too late. But even watching television with your kids and noting that people don't live that way in real life, or that if their favorite characters on a particular show are living in a fantastic apartment in New York City, that they wouldn't be able to afford it on their salaries in real life. Just starting to do those sorts of reality checks are important. I also think we live in a world where your children are likely to be exposed to the fact, again, whether it happens online or whether it happens out in the real world, to people who have a lot less than them. And it opens the door to start talking about things like giving and generosity, and how it's important to it's important to think about how much you have, how much you actually need, and how much you could afford to give to other people. Kids are naturally generous. They come home and they want to support every single fundraiser, every single bake sale, or other fundraiser that's happening at their school. But that's an opportunity to sort of unpack why. If there's a bake sale, if there's a popcorn machine, as they had in my elementary school, why are we doing this? We're not just doing this so that we can learn how to operate the popcorn machine. I mean, that's fantastic and really fun, but what's happening behind the scenes? Who are we supporting? Why do they need this money? What's going on in their lives that makes them less fortunate than us? And how can we help? The field of behavioral finance has taught us a lot of things about how we consistently look at money as human beings. But two of the basic tenets are that human beings are very, very quick to adapt. We adapt to how much we have. So if you get a raise, you very, very quickly can no longer imagine how you ever lived on less money. But we also consistently compare ourselves to others. We consistently compare ourselves, and usually we do it in a way that makes us feel bad. We are always looking at people who have more than us and thinking, I wish, or there's some element of FOMO that creeps into our heads. You need to teach your kids to compare down as well as up, because that makes them feel fortunate. It makes them generous. It makes them grateful. And all of those things are big happiness boosters at a time when so many kids are so anxious.
Yeah, speaking of anxious kids and social media, we didn't come up with it. I mean, I didn't grow up with social media, and I was already sold to all the time through television commercials. Now these kids are being sold anytime they pick up a device that is connected to the internet. There's something that's trying to sell them, or a brand that's trying to sell them on something. As parents, how do we process that and how do we deal with it? Because this is just such a consumerist time and era and world that we live in.
We deal with it by talking about it, by acknowledging what's going on. And if you're a parent these days, I hope that you're in the loop with your kids, seeing what they see as much as possible. I know it's not possible to see everything that they see, but as much as possible, you know, unpack what are they seeing on social media? What are the messages that they're getting? Ask questions about why they want that thing. What did they see that makes them want that thing? Do they need that thing? Do they want that thing, or do they really want that thing? And if they really want that thing, are they willing to wait for that thing until a special occasion like a birthday or a holiday? Or are they willing to work in some way or save to make that thing happen? Turn off the in-app purchases. Don't give your kids the ability to buy things themselves with a simple click. It's too easy. It's too easy for adults to handle in so many cases. But just being cognizant is, I think, the absolute least that we can do.
Jane, I'm curious what you're hearing the most from parents who find money or financial conversations with their kids tricky.
I hear it most from parents who don't feel confident in their own financial abilities. When we when we feel like we're not particularly good with money ourselves, it's really hard
Yeah.
for us to think that we're going to be good teachers for the next generation. Interestingly, I hear it a lot from teachers who are asked to step in and have conversations about money in their classrooms with kids, asked to teach the core concepts of financial literacy. I come back to the fact that they're really, look, when we get into the landscape of financial products, the adult landscape of financial
Yeah.
products, it's full of lingo, it's full of jargon, it's full of complexity. But being good with money, whether you are 45 or 25 or 10, really boils down to five things. And it took me a long time doing this work to realize that it was this simple, but it is this simple. Number one, you have to have some money. Now, as an adult, that means earning a decent living. As a child, it means that you probably need to get an allowance or a part-time job or something that puts some money in your hands that you then have to manage. The second thing you have to do, and you have to do it consistently, is spend less than you have so that you can build a buffer. You can save a little bit of something. I think it's really important to teach our kids to become investors. That's number 3. You can start teaching them that in high school. Tell them what you're doing in your 401k. Tell them how you're investing your money. Tell them, if you're buying stocks and you're excited about those stocks, you are an owner of a piece of a company. That is really fun. Kids like this. So bring them along. We have to protect everything that we have. That's number 4. Parents do it with a basic estate plan, but we also do it with the right insurance coverages. This is a great lesson to talk to your kids about when they're thinking that they might want to drive, right? We need auto insurance. Auto insurance for you because you're a teenager, that's going to cost a lot of money. Let's talk about how we can make you a safer driver. And maybe how your good grades can actually help us get a break on your auto insurance. And you can talk to them about it with the cell phone as well, right? Do we want cell phone insurance? Are you going to lose this phone? Are you going to step on this phone? Are you going to drop it in the toilet? Like what's going to happen to this phone? And what happens? What are the consequences if it does? And the 5th thing on my list is that you've got to give back in some way, because again, that's a noted happiness boost. And parents and kids should have conversations about how your family wants to approach giving. What do we do as a family? I don't believe that givers are born. I believe that givers are raised, and that it's important to put some effort into raising them.
Yeah, I love that. A lot of big feelings come up around money, wealth, status, a lot of these things that we're talking about today. It can be emotionally fraught for us adults. So, how can parents make sure there's room for all kinds of feelings when it comes to talking to our kids about these topics without making them feel stressed out or shame? I guess my question is about how to have open and honest conversations that help kids to understand without feeling ashamed.
I think you have conversations with your kids the same way you have conversations with your older parents, which is difficult for a lot of adults to do. And the way that I begin, the way that I have found is easiest to get into these things is by acknowledging your own humanity. Boy, I saw something today that I really wanted, and I gosh, somebody else had it. I was jealous that they had it. It's not in my budget. I can't afford it. Um, and I kind of feel bad that I felt jealous. Did you ever feel this way? And here's how I'm handling these feelings of my own. If you've ever felt this way, how do you handle it? Where do you put these feelings? What do you do with them? And just back and forth. Um, how does it make you feel, the fact that grandma gave you $25 for your birthday or $100 for your birthday? That's a lot of money. That's an opportunity. Does it make you feel good? Do you feel scared? Do you feel um, anxious that you're going to blow this opportunity? Um, uh, what's going on in your head right now?
Yeah, yeah. This is a great script and a great thing to remember. Any advice for parents to feel more confident going into these conversations?
No, honestly, not really. I think practice makes perfect, right? I mean, I do not. Well, I will give you my one hack for having these conversations, but I don't think you should expect yourself to be perfect. I think you should expect yourself to be human. And if you get emotional, that's okay. Your kids are allowed to see that money is a tough topic, and they're allowed to see that and know that you talk about it anyway, because if you don't talk about it, that's how you get into trouble. That's how you bury it. But my hack for all difficult conversations is to have them in the car. And this was something that my mother taught me, that when you are driving, You know that you've got a captive audience. They're not
Mhm.
unbuckling their seatbelt and jumping out the door. Um, you don't have to look at them necessarily, so that sometimes makes it easier. But it gives you some one-on-one time when you can actually talk about these difficult things. And so over the years, and my kids are older now, but over the years in the car is where I talked about an awful lot of difficult topics, including money.
That's such a good reminder because it's also where kids will bring things up on their own. Like I've noticed on the flip side too that sometimes I'll be driving and I'll say less or I'll say nothing. And that's when kids decide to bring up something big or open up with a big reveal.
Well, and sometimes when they're in the car with a friend and they are having a conversation, it gives you an opportunity to sort of get in there a little bit and just offer a few pieces of advice or wisdom.
Yes. Yes. Okay, Jean, we're wrapping up. If you could leave parents with one piece of advice about raising kids who have a healthy relationship with money, what would it be?
Give them some money to manage and then make them manage it.
Excellent. Jean Chatzky is the host of the Her Money podcast. Jean, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to Jean Chatzky for joining us. Talking about status, wealth, and money with kids obviously isn't always simple. They see a lot around them from their friends and social media, but don't always get what it means. Sometimes they're curious. A lot of times they can be confused or worried. That's why it is so important to help them early on so they can feel confident and know their value isn't just about money or things. For more tools and resources, visit us at akidsco.com. Thanks for listening to Raising Us. And if this episode resonated with you, which we hope it did, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe and follow on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you get your podcasts. Raising Us is sponsored by Nugget. It's hosted by me, Elise Hugh. Our executive producer is Teresa Zoe.